There's two separate invasions wherein the Persians wanted to punish Athens for helping out with some stuff that we're going to see in a minute. So take a look at these images, and I'll hit the lights in a second. Actually, yeah, these were actual photos taken. Okay, guys, let's calm down, please. Take a look at these images. What do you see about the way that Greeks are portrayed and the way that Persians are portrayed in the movie 300?
Creepy looking?
Which one is creepy looking?
The guy in chains.
The Persians.
And the guy in the middle.
Yeah. What about this guy over here?
She's a noble warrior.
Yes, he's noble. What is missing?
His shirt.
Which would be what though? What would he be wearing? Armor, right? But of course, for entertainment purposes and drama, we want to say that he's so tough that he doesn't have to wear the armor.
Look at him.
He's got a helmet.
He does have a helmet.
No.
But you
Armor gets molded so it looks like muscles.
That's
No, that's how they actually did it.
no.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is, but he's
Yeah, but
he's not wearing it here, is he? You get this sense that he could probably just kind of like flex, and it would repel all the arrows and the spears, right?
That'd be awesome.
It makes for a better movie, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
But, in reality, he'd be wearing armor. And, of course, in reality, this guy will not be wearing some crazy grotesque mask. And, of course, monsters don't really exist.
Wait, that's a monster?
But, of course, you have to, for entertainment purposes, you want to have a good guy, you want to have a bad guy, right? So that's an easy way to make it more entertaining. Good guys versus bad guys. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and tell you the end of the story. The Greeks win. They win 2 times. 2 different invasions, they win. They repel the Persians, despite being heavily outnumbered each time. There's 3 factors, okay, that are very important for the Greeks to essentially win. Yeah. Yeah, you want to follow along? It's divided, you'll see in different sections, and as we get to it, we're going to be taking some notes. This part isn't on there, so that's why it's not. Okay. So in case you were looking around for it, this part's on. So these 3 factors: military technology, which is the weapons they used, their knowledge of and their use of the natural landscape, so geography, physical features, the mountains, the valleys, etc., choosing where to fight. That's basically one factor. And finally, their battle tactics, the way they fight in battle, using the phalanx, as we're going to look at in a couple minutes. Now I'm going to make the argument that the Greeks' knowledge and use of their geographic environment allowed them to defeat a much larger force of invading Persians. Not just once, but twice. So I'm going to argue that the second factor is the most important. When we get to the end of the class, I'm going to ask each of you to evaluate which factor you think is most important based on the lesson today. And my job is to try to convince you that I'm right. But of course, you're not getting graded on whether you agree with me. So, something to think about. Most of what we know about the Persian Wars comes from this guy, Herodotus. He was a Greek born in Asia Minor. Now if you look at the year that he was born, and you look at the front of your handout at the top, the years the Persian Wars were fought, what does that mean for Herodotus?
He's like 4 years old when it ended.
Right. So he wasn't really there, do you think? Fighting the battles? No. So what Herodotus did was he went around and talked to people who were actually there. And he wrote down their stories. Okay? he turned their stories into a written account of the Persian Wars. And of course, just like, remember Homer doing the Iliad and the Odyssey, the Greeks like to embellish their stories, make them more entertaining, kind of the way that we do making movies like 300. We mix fact with fiction so that it's a better story. Okay, so people want to hear the story. And Herodotus does a lot of this. He adds in some little details that he's not sure actually happened. But for the most part, because of the way he goes about interviewing people and recording it methodically, we typically consider Herodotus in Western civilization as the father of history. And that's something that you need to know forever, as Ms. Scott would say. Take that one to your grave. Of course, he compiled his very, very, very large book called The History of the Persian Wars. So here we can see all the places that Greeks are living in about 500 BC. Everywhere that's green is where Greeks are living. Do you remember what this strip was called in Asia Minor? Ionia, right. That's going to be important, because that's how the Persian Wars get started. Look, the Greeks are spread pretty far around the Mediterranean, but the Persians are spread even farther. Now look at little Greece up here in the top left. Pretty small when you compare it to the Persian Empire. It stretches all the way from the Indus Valley all the way to Egypt and to Greece. And of course the Persians control that Ionian section, right? The city-states along the coastline of Asia Minor. And those city-states decide that they don't want to be part of the Persian Empire anymore. They want to become free and rule themselves. So they ask Athens for military help. They want the Athenians to send them warriors, send them ships, supplies, etc., to help throw off the Persians. The revolt is somewhat successful. They do enough damage to the Persians that King Darius of Persia is willing to grant the city-states in Asia Minor a little bit more freedom in terms of ruling themselves. But they're technically still part of the Persian Empire. Darius is pretty ticked off at Athens. How dare this tiny little city-state and this tiny little culture revolt against the great Persian Empire created by their god. So he gets mad at Athens. He decides that he's going to burn Athens to the ground. Kill every man, woman, and child living in Athens that he can find. Complete slaughter. Now we're going to take a break from the story, come back to the battles later. What we're going to look at now are a couple short clips that talk about the Greek soldiers, the hoplites, and the Persian soldiers called immortals. So as we watch these clips, I want you to be looking at the types of weapons that the Greeks and the Persians are using, whether they're using a shield, armor, what these things are made out of. And we'll talk about who you think at the end would have the advantage when these two sides were to come into contact.